Okay, so one more time, this is Unit 3, Lesson 8, and then yesterday's assignment was bubbles 1, 2, 3, and 4. Bubble number 1, as always, is just an overview of the assignment, and it's going to take a look at some of the new code that we'll be using. So you'll notice that all of these codes are pink, which means that they are part of the well, we'll see in a minute. Okay. So again, once you are done with any particular um, uh, bubble, make sure you hit the continue or next button at the bottom in orange, and that way you get credit for doing this. I do want to mention, ladies and gentlemen, some of you are going into your code.org accounts and you're just hitting continue button, but you're not actually doing the work. I have to physically go in and check your work. The computer does not check it for me. So if you are just going in and hitting continue, 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 and not actually doing the work, you're still not going to get credit for it. Okay. All right. So Unit 3, Lesson 8, and we are now at bubble number 2. Now it says, look at the code below and predict where the B sprite will appear. I'm going to change this over to block because it's a little easier to see that way. So it says var B equals create sprite 200, 200, B set animation B. All right, so we've created the variable B. It's creating a sprite. That B is an animation. So we have a picture of a B, I'm guessing, on the animation tab. And then it says BX is 350, BY 350, and then it's drawing the sprite. So where is this B going to show up? And the question gives us the option of a B sprite in the middle of the screen, bottom right, 2 B sprites, one in the middle, one on the bottom right, 3 B sprites, all in different places. Nothing, there will be an error. So when I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, there's really only kind of 2 options. The sprite is being created at 200, 200, but then it says something down here about BX at 350 or BY at 350, and then I'm drawing the sprite. So I'm actually not sure. Is it going to render in the center or at 350, 350, which again, if you use your grid, you can see would be down here. 350, 350 is at this location, give or take. So it might be in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, or it could be at 200, 200, which is the center of the screen. I think maybe it's the center of the screen. I'm not sure. So that is what I'm going to pick. But again, bubble number 2 here is just about what do you think? There's no way to get this wrong. What do you think? I think it's at A. And I'm going to hit run. And as you can see, I was wrong, okay? Like it's actually down here at 350, 350. So what that tells me is that this B.X or this B.Y is going to change the location, the X and Y location of my animation or of my variable. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Cool. So now I'm going to go ahead and hit finish, and I'm going to continue. And again, for bubble 2, as you move forward, that again, the key thing is to make sure that it gets done. All right, now it says sprite properties keep track of all the information in your program needs to know about a sprite, such as the size and the location. You can change these values of the properties just like you do variables and see the results when your sprite is drawn on the screen. Do this. Run the program to see where the sprite appears. Then change the X and Y properties of the paintbrush sprite to make sure you can move it onto the palette. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show my grid. I know what to do, so I'm going to close my instructions, and I'm going to make my workspace a little bit bigger. So if I hit run, I can see my palette down here, and my paintbrush is up here. So I need to move this paintbrush down. So it's over here on the palette. So my X location, again, and I always keep my grid on, if this X location, wherever I want this to be, all I'm going to really do is move my cursor to where I would like this thing to be. So I'm going to kind of move it over here. And if you look under where it says show grid, it gives me an X and a Y location of where my cursor currently is. I'm at 127X and 254Y. I don't like those numbers, so I'm going to go 125 and 250. So my brush is going to go to 125, and my Y is going to go to 250, and I hope this works. Again, I'm not sure. I am doing this for you right now. So I'm going to go ahead, reset, and I'm going to hit run. And as we can see, my brush is now touching my palette. Is this the only answer? No. As long as it's touching the palette anywhere, you are good to go. So that is bubble number 3. Again, when you're done, make sure you hit the finish button. Okay, last one, bubble number 4. Again, this is yesterday's assignment. Lesson 8, numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. So today's it says sprites have a lot of properties. Check out the 2 new blocks in this activity and try them out for yourself. Notice that different sprites can use the same animation and still look different because of properties. Do this. Run the program and see how the rotation and scale blocks make the first 2 notes different. Use the rotation and scale blocks on the last 2 notes to make them look different too. All right. So I'm using rotation and scale, and I always like to use my grid, and I'm going to go ahead and close my instructions because I know what to do, and I'm going to hit run. All right. So even though it's all the same animation, and if you go through, you'll see that they all say set animation to 8th note, that they all say the same thing, but these all look slightly different. All right, so again, I have a scale of 0.3 and a rotation of 20. On my on my note number 2, I have a scale of 0.7. 0.7 is bigger than 0.3, and you'll notice it's a bigger note. And then it says a rotation of negative 30. Interesting. And then it asks me to now change note 3 and note 4. So again, I'm going to go into my sprites. I am going to say I'm going to change my scale. So I'm going to grab scale and I'm going to put it under note 3. I'm going to grab rotation and I'm going to bring it under note 3. Again, this is not sprite. It is the name of my sprite for this sprite is note 3. So I need to change the name of my sprite first. Now, as far as scale, if I want it to be bigger, I'm going to go bigger than 1. If I want it to be smaller, I'm going to go smaller than 1. I'm going to take this one in at 0.25. Why not? And again, rotation is about degrees of a clock. So always think in terms of somewhere between 0 and 360. Okay? And then if you wanted to go in the opposite direction, it'll have to be a negative. So if you go clockwise, 0 between 360. If you wanted to spin counterclockwise, use a negative number. But I'm going to use a positive number, and I'm going to say 120 because, I don't know, that's a good angle, right? And I'm going to go ahead and hit reset and run. So now we see the note is, I don't like it. It's a kind of upside down. That is kind of weird looking, but it doesn't matter. You get the idea. You can change the scale. I've made it smaller, and you can change the rotation by spinning it any degree between 0 and 360 if you wanted to go clockwise. If you wanted to go counterclockwise, use negative numbers. All right, so that you can fix note 4 on your own if you did note 3 with me. And then